So the next thing we need to do is sort of define this message thing here. And the problem is that this isn't really just a message, it's kind of another string, another list of awkward headers. So if we just look at the Wikipedia page again, you can see that what we're going to be defining is this bit here as the message. So we need the boundary, then each part has its own set of headers, then a blank line, then that part's content, and then the boundary again. So we can do that by just going back to our code. We can define a new array similar to the headers array, and we're going to call this one message. And this is going to be equal to an array. So exactly the same as before, and then in here we're going to define each sort of line, each header and content of the actual message body. So yeah, it's essentially another list of headers, but it's just a bit awkward. So I was trying to say earlier, there's no sort of PHP stuff, it's all awkward email knowledge. Anyway, so first thing is the boundary, boundary, like so. Second thing is the content type for this part. So this part is going to be the actual text, so we're just going to set this to we're going to set this to content type to text / plain. You could use like text HTML here if you wanted, it's not entirely necessary. And we also need to set the content transfer encoding, like so. We're going to set this to 7-bit. No idea why, but you just need to. Again, it's like email stuff. 7-bit seems kind of wrong to me. I don't know why. I thought we would use something like 8. I don't know. 7 seems weird. Whatever. After that, we need the blank line, so just an empty element. And after that, we need the actual body. So this is passed in to this function using the body parameter, so we can just use that here. And now there is another slight problem, because in a multi-part message, each line can only have a certain length. So what we need to do is split each line if it goes past that length. And luckily PHP has a function that does this called chunk split, like so, and that will just split up the message. It'll add a line break sort of where necessary at the limit of characters. You've probably noticed this if you get a plain text email, they are quite narrow for some reason. Well, this is why. So after that, that's the sort of text message part done. We need to add the file part. So this is the boundary again to indicate the start of a new part. Boundary, like so. And then it's the same thing again, a list of headers for this part. So the first one, content type. Content type. This is going to be set to something from the file parameter, file variable. I probably should have pointed out by now actually that this file is going to be a element from the files array. So you know how when you upload a file you get well, the files array. We're passing that actual element in, and then it's going to contain like the information on the file. So generally you use this to upload the file, like you may have used like move uploaded files, whatever, temp name to location. In this case we're just going to be using the name and the type to set the type here and the name in the name section, which I'll get to in a minute. So it's file type. After that we need the name. Hang on, what have I done? That shouldn't be there, that should be there. Oops. Yeah, okay, so name equals something in quotes, which is the file name, which just tells the email client what to display as the file name essentially. So, oops, if we just go back to my email thingy, oh, I've deleted the message. Well, if we just look at the deleted message, you can see the one from the demo. You can see it just says 109, which is the file name. So whatever you enter in the name will appear here. So back to the inbox, and back to the code. So here we just need the file name, because that is the name of the file that was uploaded. Okay, after that we need the content disposition. Again, not really sure what that means. I know what it does is make the file downloadable, maybe? No, that doesn't seem right. Well, you set it to attachment anyway. I guess, actually, no, what it probably makes more sense is that it's telling the email client that this is an attachment and not something it should just be, like a file that should be used in the message. Because you can send images as parts and then reference them in the actual body of the message as well, so maybe that's why you need this. Anyway, you also need to set the file name here, but this time it's file name, not just name. Whoops. And this is just the same, so file name. Like so. After that, you need the content transfer encoding again. So it's the same as last time, except we're not going to be setting it to 7-bit, we're going to set it to base 64, because that is a fairly foolproof way to encode a file. And after that, we need the blank empty element to indicate the blank line, and then we need the file contents. So what we're going to do is, hang on, sorry. Okay. So what we're going to do is then create, we're going to get the file contents using the file get contents function, like so, and we're going to pass in the path to the file. That looks wrong. Yeah, there's missing n contents. And we're going to pass in the path to the file, which in this case is going to be the temporary location of the file, which is in the files array. So we can just get that like so. Ta-da! So now we've done that, we need to encode it to base 64, because at the moment this would just be sort of binary data. So we can use base 64 encode, and then we need to chunk split it as before. So chunk split, which again, I won't go over that again, there's no point. And then after that, we just need a final boundary to indicate that the message has ended. So it's -- boundary -- and that just means this message is over. That should be one of those. Right, so with any luck that should actually work. Oh, obviously we need to actually send this list of monstrous headers as the message, which again we're going to do using the implode function to put a /r carriage return new line between each element of the message array. So with a bit of luck that will work. But before we can test it, what we actually need to do is create the page, the actual processing code, which luckily, if you're sort of panicking about how complicated this looks, this is actually quite simple now to find that function. So at the top of this page, we just need to check if they have submitted the file. So we're going to check if is set post name and files file. And if they're both set, we're going to do some stuff and process the email message. So what we're going to do is just call for testing. I'm going to call the mail file function like so. And if you remember, the parameters were the email address it was sent to, which is going to be the same testing email address that I used before, like so. The second one is who it's from, which is going to be the same. .co.uk, like so. The third parameter, did that last time. The third parameter is going to be the subject of the message, which is going to be a file upload. Why not? Next parameter is going to be the body, which we're going to leave blank for now, and the next final one is the file, which we're going to get from files file, just like so, except uppercase S. So now we should be able to test this, and hopefully, fingers crossed, it will work. So going back to our browser, which is here, make sure we haven't got any messages, go to our form, hit reload, no syntax errors, no syntax errors, which is encouraging. So let's enter a name, Bob again, and then pick a file to upload. That one was a bit boring, not sure how that matters. Click email file, still no errors, still encouraging. Sometimes it does take a while, because when you email a file, it is queued, and then it has to upload it to the server. So there you go, now it's arrived. So just opening this message up, hopefully, ta-da, lovely, brilliant, that worked. I shouldn't be so surprised, that's bad. Anyway, so you can see that this has actually worked. We have been sent this file that I selected, and if I just click on this, you see we have the file name here as 103, and if I just bring this bit down here and scroll down, you can see that we have the from header and the content type with the boundary that has been defined. And this is sort of fairly sort of important, I guess. Well, it is. It sort of splits up the parts. But you can just see that this is the MD5 that we defined, and if I send another email, this will be again randomly generated. So yeah, that's basically that. So yeah, that's essentially it. The next thing we need to do is just add a sort of bit of information about this file. So we can do that just by adding to the body that we sent. So going back to our send email page, just above this mail function call, well, mail file we just made, we're going to define a new variable which is going to be called body. And this is going to be equal to a string, which we're going to be using a here or now. I don't know what the names of these are. Doc, anyway. One of them is, I don't know, body. I know that, hang on. So what this is essentially the same as having a variable like this, except it's a bit neater. So, well, in terms of, it's just an alternative, I guess. So we don't need that. So between here, we're just going to define the actual message body. So we're going to we're just going to say who the message was from, and this is going to be the name that they sent, which is post name. And because we are sending this message as plain text, we don't really need to worry about anything like XSS attacks here. But if you were using HTML, you'd need to make sure that this was properly validated and sanitized and all that good stuff. Oh, and that's the other thing. Because we are not actually uploading this file to the server, and we're just sending it to someone, and then the email client will only let them download it. It won't let them run any file. We don't have to worry about validating the file actually at all, which is quite nice. But it's just, it feels a little uncomfortable, but it's fine, don't worry. Anyway, after the from, who it's from, we're going to have a list of details. So we're going to have the name, the size, and the type. So, oops, so the name is in the files array. So files, did that last time, files, file, name, like so. The size is in the same place, so what I'm going to do is just copy that down and change name to size, and the type is again the same, so paste that again and change that to type. So now almost one final test, we need to change this sort of placeholder to the body variable, like so. So now, one final test, we can go to our page again. I'll just delete this temporary testing email and go back to our page, hit reload, enter a different name, Simon, and pick a different file, so that green one, email file. Just try and stall for a little bit by thinking of something else to say. No, click reload again, there it is, open the email up, and you can see that now we have this file information. So we get who the message was from, the name, the size in bytes, which isn't really that friendly, and it's also a bit pointless considering the email client will be able to tell you the size of the file. There you go, so it says the size there. So not really necessary to have the size, but it's just nice to have a bit more information. And then you can see that the file is attached below. So finally, after like how many parts this has been, we've basically managed it. So this has, well, hopefully this was useful, and that is actually basically it. So just like I said again, the only problem really with this is trying to get this horrible list of headers right. Once you've done that, there's not really much to it. Anyway, thank you for watching, and hopefully this was useful.